As political fights across the country become more contentious, key legal decisions over issues like gerrymandering are finding their way to state Supreme Courts. That's turned once overlooked questions about who sits on the bench into all out political battles of their own. In two states, liberal Supreme Court justices are under fire. In Wisconsin, Justice Janet Protasiewicz, less than 2 months into the job, is facing potential impeachment by the Republican-controlled legislature. And in North Carolina, Justice Anita Earls, one of just 2 Democrats on the court, is being investigated by a judicial commission. To discuss the politics at play in state courts, we're joined by Zach Schultz, who covers politics for PBS Wisconsin, and Colin Campbell, Capitol Bureau Chief for WUNC. With a welcome to you both. Zach, we should explain that in Wisconsin, Republicans who are fighting to preserve the legislative electoral maps that they drew are arguing that Justice Protasiewicz has to recuse herself from this case. Where do things stand?
Well, they're threatening impeachment, which is a process in Wisconsin for elected judges that we really haven't had to deal with in the last century plus. So it's completely new territory. The Assembly Speaker, the leader of the Republicans for the legislature, Robin Vos, says he's bringing in some former Supreme Court justices, some conservatives, to help give him some legal guidance as to what path may lay forward and whether any of the things that Janet Protasiewicz has said on the campaign trail last spring would rise to the level of warranting an impeachment process. At the same time, he's also hedging some bets, and he's actually trying to advance a bill that would create a nonpartisan redistricting process here in Wisconsin based on the Iowa model. But Democrats are rejecting that call for right now, saying that the bill isn't close enough to the Iowa model to count, that there's little clauses. They don't trust the Republicans, especially since for the last decade plus, Republicans have said, we don't need an Iowa model. We should write the bills ourselves.
So how likely is impeachment? And is there any concern that impeaching the justice would just infuriate Democrats and potentially independents and have a blowback effect on Republicans in future elections?
The likelihood of impeachment is anybody's guess. We've already seen one Republican in the assembly come out and say he would not vote for impeachment. We've seen an all-out campaign by Democrats going after other Republicans that they think may be in districts that may be swingable. So there's absolutely the threat of blowback, especially if impeachment doesn't work and maps end up being rewritten that put some of those Republicans in much less favorable districts next year. So there is a lot of calculating, like how far can they go? What should they do in this process? The real question is if impeachment actually goes forward, there'll be a lawsuit immediately filed saying it's invalid, and then that would go to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. And in that case, Janet Protasiewicz probably would recuse herself because it would directly impact her in potential impeachment. So we could see all sorts of different tracks along these lines.
In Colin, in North Carolina, the state Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls is suing a judicial oversight board that's investigating her for comments she made about the diversity of the state's judicial system. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so she made some comments a few months back to a judicial public legal publication, raising some issues about the diversity in hiring in the court system, as well as a decision by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to do away with the Commission on Equity. That has landed her in hot water with a group called the North Carolina Judicial Standards Commission that oversees the conduct of judges. It's led by Republican judges, and they are in the process of investigating her. She says the investigation infringes on her free speech rights, so she's taken this to a federal court, filed a lawsuit to block this investigation and disciplinary action from going forward. That's currently pending at the federal court level. The latest we've heard from that is that the federal judge assigned to the case has accused both the Standards Commission and Justice Earls of being, quote, inflammatory in their accusations in the legal filing so far. So this is going to end up being a pretty spicy court battle as it goes forward.
And Colin, if she were to be removed, how would that affect the makeup of the court and the potential outcomes of the cases coming before that court?
Well, North Carolina's Supreme Court, as of this year, has a pretty strong Republican majority. It's 5-2. It was a Democratic majority last year, so that's why you're seeing some of this whiplash here in terms of the animosity on the court. If she were to be removed, which is probably an unlikely scenario here, but certainly within the realm of possibility, um, she's going to get reappointed by, or get replaced by the state's governor, who's currently a Democrat. And even if the state's governor were a Republican in the future and were to replace her, there's still a Republican majority for the next couple of election cycles before Democrats could take control of this court. So a lot of it is more about sort of the chilling of speech and the animosity that occurs on the Supreme Court, more so than which party gets to be in control at this point.
Is there a precedent for this in North Carolina, Colin, or is this the first time something like this has happened, where a judge has been targeted, I guess she would say, for previous comments like this?
Yeah, the Judicial Standards Commission, I think, has filed disciplinary action against a variety of judges. That's the first time that I can recall that it's about comments that someone has made, a critique of the judicial system. They're arguing that she's violated a code of conduct that prevents judges from being able to say anything that impacts public confidence in the courts, which, of course, is a very vague piece of the judicial code of conduct. And I don't think it's been used in this way, at least to my knowledge, up until now.
Zach, the last Supreme Court election in Wisconsin was the most expensive judicial race in that state's history. $45 million spent. It was incredibly contentious and partisan, even though it's technically, as I understand it, a nonpartisan election. Has there been any talk of changing how judges are chosen in that state?
It's a conversation that comes up almost every single Supreme Court election, and it's in the Constitution. So it would require a constitutional amendment. And right now, that process would require 2 consecutive legislatures passing that and then a statewide referendum approving it. It's never even gotten to the point of the legislature introducing it, even when Democrats controlled the legislature more than a decade ago. That's simply not going to happen. Most people say, as ugly as it can be, they still like the accessibility of judges to be directly elected by the people. But over time, what that's meant is the parties have gotten more and more involved at every step, and it's more difficult for any of these candidates to keep an arm's length away from the partisan process, despite its technically being nonpartisan.
Zach Schultz of PBS Wisconsin and Colin Campbell of WUNC in North Carolina. Thanks to you both.
Thanks a lot.
Astronomers around the world are calling for international agreements to limit the spread of satellite constellations in space, warning that the light pollution they create damages vital scientific work. In Britain, the government's also being urged to impose new planning regulations to stop the alarming loss of the nation's dark skies. Special correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports from southern England.
After one of the worst British summers in recent memory, a September sunset of this calibre is enough to make anyone salsa like no one is watching. But in increasingly urbanised Britain, the same can't be said of our night skies. I'm using red light because I want to protect my night vision and also to minimise light pollution, as I'm about to do some time-lapse videos of the night sky. It's pretty cloudy tonight, but I can still see the stars, although the clarity is nothing to make a song and dance about. Images of the twinkling heavens are tainted by the tinge of light pollution from the city of Brighton. This is a fair representation of the state of the skies above much of the UK.
We're seeing roughly a 10% loss of our skies over the last 10 years. We're slowly losing access to our dark skies. Nature's suffering from it as well. They're losing their dark skies, and that's a really key, important thing to lose for us.
Dan Oakley is a dark skies consultant working to reduce light pollution.
A dark sky is something that connects humanity to the wider universe, really. And being able to stand under a dark sky means you can kind of look at yourself in the mirror and try to figure out where you came from, ask those big existential questions of life, the universe, of everything.
I grew up in the southwest part of the U.S. in a place and time when there wasn't as much light pollution.
Megan Eves swapped the darkness of New Mexico for London's bright lights 13 years ago. She's the editor of Nightscape, a quarterly magazine committed to reclaiming starry, starry nights.
It's just such a fundamental part of who I am and also a part of who humans are. All of our art and our music and films throughout history have been inspired by the night sky.
Dark sky activists insist there are compelling health reasons to fight light pollution.
Light at night disrupts our circadian rhythm, which is what produces the hormone melatonin, which impacts our sleep cycle. It can result in all sorts of mental health issues, and it can lead to all sorts of different illnesses.
And great news, all systems are go for launch, so let's watch as Falcon 9 takes our 22 Starlink satellites into space.
The final frontier of light pollution.
There's great concern in the global astronomical community about the impact of satellites in low Earth orbit and what that means for our science.
Leading astronomer Robert Massey and his peers want governments to pay attention.
We're effectively in a paradigm shift. We've gone from having a couple of thousand of these in low Earth orbit a few years ago.
15 minus 15 seconds.
What we now have is a number which is 6,000 or 7,000 and rising rapidly.
And most of those are Starlink satellites owned by Elon Musk. The Ukrainians are reliant on them as they try to drive Russian forces out of their territory.
2, 1, ignition.
It's not inconceivable that we could see hundreds of thousands of satellites in that region of space above the Earth.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Starlink satellites operate in low Earth orbit, which enables the delivery of high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe.
Satellites reflect sunlight. This video shows a train of satellites shortly after their release into orbit.
We rely on pointing very sensitive telescopes at the sky, looking for faint objects, and what happens with satellites crossing the field is that you get a whole series of streaks. An awful lot of data is lost, and that science is compromised.
2, 1, ignition.
But satellite companies are trying to minimize light pollution from space, as Dr. Bruce Cameron from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology explains.
So they have tried applying new coatings on the outside, which either absorb light or reflect light back into space. They have tried sunshades, meaning shading the satellite from some of that inbound sunlight that is then reflected back to Earth as light pollution.
Space has become the new Wild West. China is talking of launching a constellation of 13,000 satellites with the potential to expand even further. As light pollution expands across Europe, dark spaces are ever harder to find. This is Beg Dellet in North Wales. The music of the river and perfect starlight helped to convince Emma Sloan and her husband to buy this hotel in a valley where even on a cloudy night, shooting stars magically appear.
It makes you so aware that there's something bigger out there, but so much larger than us. It also connects you, I guess, with whatever energy the sky is. And it also gives me a sense of this is how the world should be.
Elsewhere in Britain, people head to dark sky reserves in national parks, like this one near the south coast. Sunsets can be spectacular, as can the night. This is the Milky Way above a feature called Devil's Dyke. If you look carefully, you can just see the galaxy above the windmill in a time-lapse filmed just 10 miles away, demonstrating that the purity of darkness is at risk from encroaching development as Britain builds new towns to house its growing population.
It's made worse by bad lighting choices and bad installations. So what we can do as communities and national parks and government is to make sure that we have good guidances to help people put up the right kind of lighting at the right place at the right time.
Like this example where the light is directed downwards where it's needed, not upwards where it's not.
The thing that gives me the most hope is that light pollution is actually the easiest form of pollution to solve. We already know how to solve it. We simply light better, light smarter, light more efficiently, waste less, and turn off lights that we don't need.
Once in a rare super blue moon, the power of the solar system cuts through the haze. This phenomenon took place nearly a month ago and won't appear for another 14 years. What will light pollution be like then? For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Malcolm Brabant on Britain's south coast.